The views expressed, opinions given, and any communication made between the hosts and guests of What Are You Afraid of Horror and Paranormal Show do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of Para X Radio, EMC Network, or all services that play this show. The hosts and services are not responsible for the actions of their guests, and the original rights of all intellectual property is retained by the creator, and all work is used with either permission or Creative Commons license. The show is for entertainment purposes only. I'm horror author T. Fox Dunham.
And I'm horror author and filmmaker Phil Thomas.
And tonight we're asking you,
what are you afraid of? Philadelphia's horror home with hosts T. Fox Dunham and Phil Thomas.
He is Don Allison, ghost journalist and Skeptic. Dun dun dun! And this is episode 77.
Yeah.
You know, it feels like we just saw each other.
It really does, yeah. Has it been a week?
It's been a week, Phil.
Has it been a week?
I know, we've been sitting in these chairs for a week.
I don't understand. Yeah, that's what we do.
Well, just to let our audience...
we don't go anywhere. We just wait for the next episode to start.
We live for the episodes.
We'll sit in one spot for a week, and then we don't move.
And since our audience can't tell, because we are coming across with the virtue of audio, we stink.
That's right. Yeah.
We absolutely stink.
Thank God it's not sense-o-vision, right?
Right, exactly. Smell-o-vision.
Smell-o-vision.
Smell-o-vision. Everyone, hold your noses, because we stink, because we sit here and we live for the show. We need attention that badly.
That's right.
But this is episode 77, and we are back with Mr. Don Allison. He is the author of I Met a Ghost in Gettysburg. He's a journalist in Ohio. He's got his own column out there, and he's just a pretty neat guy, and he answered some great questions for us.
Yeah,
on the show last week, and we're back on episode 77.
Glad to have him back.
Yeah. How are you tonight, Mr. Allison?
Oh, just fine.
Cool. So what have you spent the week doing?
Well, I was kind of twiddling my thumbs and looking at my email.
Okay.
Oh, nice.
All right, so that's a good thing to do with a week.
I've done that too.
Okay, you've done that too? All right. But we just had him on the show, and he was talking about his book.
Yeah.
I Met a Ghost in Gettysburg, and it's a great book, and it talks about how he renovated a house, and he had some background with the house, and he talked about how his car sort of had trouble right in front of the house last time, and there was a pine cone waiting on the floor of the porch for him. So, pretty
creepy stuff.
It was.
Are you a horror fan in general?
Not really.
Okay.
I'll watch some horror, but no, not particularly.
Okay. I wasn't sure if you one of them guys that sits in front of Netflix and binges the latest horror movie, or
you mean you, Phil?
Like me, yeah. Like me. Yeah.
I'll have to admit I'm partial to some movies. The Shining is a
great one. Mm-hmm. One of my favorites. Yeah.
I've become more partial to science fiction lately.
Yeah, you've been getting into science fiction, yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of swinging back to it. That's where I'm kind of focusing my writing back towards science fiction. I've kind of burned out on horror a little bit, but the Bram Stokers are coming up soon up in Rhode Island. I was thinking about going up for the day with Allison. Just, I don't have anything. I can actually vote on the Stokers this year. I have enough prestige now in the Horror Writers Association where I'm allowed to vote now, but I haven't really read anything. And I'm not sure about the ethics, where I feel like if I'm going to vote, I need to read everything that...
I would say you probably should read it.
Because I'm really sure that no one's read everything.
Right. So, probably not, but,
Yeah.
Well, how long of a drive is that to the Stokers?
About 6 hours.
Okay, yeah.
It's up in Rhode Island. This year they swing east and west. So this year it's in the east. Next year it could be in California or something.
Yeah.
This year it's out here. But, I would go up to see friends and maybe do a couple of pitch sessions and maybe sit in a couple of panels.
All right.
Now, that was a lot of fun the one year when I went down to Atlanta to do that, like 3 weeks before I got married.
I remember that, yeah, when you went down there, yeah.
Playing so much. Anyway, we'll get started tonight with another reading from Don Allison's book, I Met a Ghost in Gettysburg. And this is done by David Walton, our wonderful British folk singer, David Walton. And we'll play this for you, and then we will come back and pelt Mr. Allison with a number of questions.
Right, that's right.
On What Are You Afraid Of? Horror and Paranormal Show on Para-X Radio, EMC Network. And if there's a podcast service we are not on, tell us.
Yeah. Email us, let us know.
Email us, because we will get on there.
We'll get on there, right.
We are
right
on
away.
top of that. I will shoot off an email right now. In like the week between now and the next show.
I can't think of any that we aren't
Yeah.
on, but hey, there may be.
Well, any podcast service that would have us on, we wouldn't want to play on.
Right.
That's good. Anyway, this is from I Met a Ghost in Gettysburg, read by David Walton on What Are You Afraid Of? Horror and Paranormal Show.
I Met a Ghost at Gettysburg, A Journalist's Journey into the Paranormal by Don Allison. Copyright 2015 and read by David Walton. Story 3. As our restoration work on the house continued, so did our strange encounters with the paranormal. The house would be quiet for weeks at a time. Then several unexplained incidents would occur within just a few days. It was a distinct relief to us, not to mention confirmation of our sanity, that others experienced the phenomena as well. Contractors' workers had batteries drain and lights turn off by themselves. One worker was upset when an invisible something tugged on his shirt tail as if to attract his attention, and he seemed to be upset that I had not warned him that the house was haunted. My brother-in-law, Gene Schelling, had several experiences, including phantom footsteps above his head while installing wiring in the basement, and hearing loud banging below in the basement while working in the living room. My cousin, Del Corson, who grew up in Phoenix City, Alabama, near our Grandma Champion, was intrigued with our house. He told me he had resided in a home he believed was haunted by the former owner, an elderly lady who had called the house home for many years. His experiences there included watching the front screen door open and close by itself. According to Del, Grandma once told him she believed he and I were sensitive to the paranormal. That, I must say, I found very intriguing. During a visit to Ohio, Del wanted to spend the night in our old house, which was not yet move-in ready, to see the ghost activities for himself. I told him not to expect anything, explaining that nothing ever happens when you are looking for it. As it turned out, I was wrong. As we were drifting off to sleep on the dining room floor, there was a loud rap on an antique floor-modelled hairdryer nearby, and then the radio turned on by itself. Needless to say, Del was impressed. I could only smile. Williams County Sheriff's deputies experienced problems with flashlights failing as they patrolled outside, keeping an eye on the premises after someone had broken in and stolen a number of tools and other items. Because so many other items remained, the deputies believed the thief might return, and in an attempt to catch him in the act, they set up a motion detector alarm. After just a few nights, however, they took the motion detector away. Something was setting it off several times a night, regardless of where they placed it in the house. This, a detective told me, had never happened to them before. Because the deputies kept up patrols at the property, they asked me to call in when I would be working late there or staying overnight. The house had gained a reputation with the dispatchers, and when I called in and gave the address, I sometimes received a matter-of-fact, "Oh, the haunted house," reply. In researching the past of the house, I learnt that a number of people had died there. In 1863, the mother and father of the Miller household died the same month, apparently of disease, and later the wife of one of their sons died as well. 4 Miller sons served in the army during the Civil War, and 2 of them died in the service. I'm sure there were other deaths in the home as well. Did any of this play into our paranormal experiences? We had no idea.
Are you haunted by shadow people in the middle of the night?
Do you secretly love all things creepy and spooky, enjoying ghost stories and horror fiction from the best storytellers?
Do you have a true ghost experience you want to share, but no one will believe you?
If yes, listen to the professionals on What Are You Afraid Of? Horror Paranormal Show Friday nights at 9 p.m. on Para X Radio and at www.whatareyouafraidofpodcast.com.
What Are You Afraid Of on Para X?
Our creepy and demented hosts are on call to provide you with all your spooky needs with true ghost stories, interviews, indie music, and new horror fiction. We are ready to scare you.
Para X.
Hi, I'm David Walton, and I drop whatever I'm doing to read whatever Fox and Phil demand of me. My digital, as opposed to ectoplasmic alter ego, is called Brendan Shawland, who regularly plays guitar and sings in a virtual world. Brendan has a website, David doesn't. Bandcamp sales figures would suggest that Brendan's music is decidedly niche. If you want to be in the vanguard of support as Brendan heads towards global domination, just put Brendan Shawland in your favourite search engine, and you'll find his website very close to the top. You'll see what the human looks like, and you can check out the Listen to a Song page to access Brendan's unwillingly private world of creative output.
You're listening to the Electronic Media Collective Podcast Network. Yeah, it's a mouthful. For more great shows, visit electronicmediacollective.com.
That was wonderful.
Yeah,
we are back.
Yeah, David Walton,
incredible,
such a treasure.
Yes, he is.
He really is, and he's
really good to us. Yeah.
Yeah, and he does everything for free.
Yeah, he does.
Of course, we don't charge either for the show, but he does so much for free, and he's a beautiful performance singer.
I agree.
You know, he would really get along with that David Rovix.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
And David Rovix, he sang on the last show. We're gonna have him back on a couple of shows because he basically gave me carte blanche to his music, and his music's wonderful. But he's probably
they should do a duets album. That's what I think.
I'll ask them.
They should do one together.
David said he hadn't heard of our show before, but like 6 months out of the year, he drives to different gigs around the country, and that's when he listens to all his radio shows and podcasts. So he's probably listening to us right now.
Nice.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, David.
You know, you sing beautifully.
I agree.
But we're back with Mr. Don Allison, who wrote, I Met a Ghost in Gettysburg. And I need to ask you real quick, and this is a question that came from one of our fans and a guest we just had on the show, and I'll tell you who it was in just a second. And this was, she said, please ask him if the ghost in the house he was renovating ever followed him outside the home.
Yes. The ghost has not only been outside, one time my underwear was snapped as I was working in the back of the house.
Cheeky, yeah.
Yes, very much so.
Cheeky ghost. So we got grandfathers pointing to their crotches and ghosts snapping underwear. You lead a very interesting life, Mr. Allison.
I try.
By the way, that came from paranormal author and investigator we just had her on the show, Kathy Gash. She said you would know her better as Tabby Cat.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, she's very very good author, very good book. She's a lot of fun.
And you met her in Gettysburg and did some kind of investigation with her, I believe?
Yes. As a matter of fact, it'll be a year this April at the Fairfield Inn near Gettysburg. It was a Confederate hospital on Lee's retreat route. And, yes, had some very interesting encounters there.
Wow. We really got to set up in, like, Gettysburg. And
I know.
Next time we'll go and do some ghost investigating. So last time we did the show with Mark, and it took a couple hours. I was pretty stressed out because we had all sorts of technical issues. And Allison was just like, okay, you're packed up. You're going back to the hotel. You're taking a shower. You're done. You're on wipe time. We're going to go get some Jameson in you, get you to bed. You're going to be fine. It was fun.
I remember that the video feed was not working.
Yeah, well, we discovered that October.
The internet wasn't.
We had so much ambition that October to do all these live feeds from places like Pennhurst and Gettysburg. And we discovered that a haunted house is usually old and not very good for Wi-Fi. So from now on, we do our live feed, it's going to be like at a haunted mall.
Right, yeah. a quote-unquote haunted mall.
It'll be haunted by the time we're done with it.
Exactly.
So...
Yeah. Actually, the room that I'm in right now is a very active room in our house, and I have had issues with the Wi-Fi and Skype on radio stations before. So,
well, I mean, I have said before, I say it's the ghosts. It's they're interfering with our Wi-Fi.
That's what I blame. That is what I blame.
Well, that's what Mark Nesbitt blamed the ghost too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So this is good. So with our sound quality issues, the ghost did it.
Yeah, it's not our fault.
Yeah, it's the way of snapping our underwear. That's going on a tweet, by the way. Ghosts are snapping Don Allison's underwear. So anyway, so do you believe you have any psychic capacity? Perhaps you're a little sad.
Yes, I really believe that I am to a degree. I'm also finding that you can sort of hone those skills. I had you had asked at one point in the previous show if I'd had any paranormal encounters earlier in life. Mm-hmm. I was doing some research for a book on the 38th Ohio Regiment in the Civil War. My co-author and I were on the field of Jonesboro, Georgia, and we were retracing the steps of the 38th Ohio in a battle where they lost nearly half of their men in about 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. And I found myself in an area where they were pinned down in front of Confederate entrenchments, and I had all my energy drained in my mind's eye. I could see the battle. My friend thought I was going to pass out. We had a local historian helping to guide us around. I didn't want to say too much in front of the other historian, especially at that point in my life. I had no interest or belief in the paranormal. Right. My co-author told me I turned white, and he thought I was going to pass out. Very incredible, intense experience.
Wow.
I've also actually, I believe, was contacted by my great-great-grandfather, Frank Champion, who was with the 15th Alabama Infantry at Gettysburg.
Oh, wow. That if that is true, that's incredible.
Yeah.
I had no knowledge that I had family members at Gettysburg when my grandson and I had our experience there. That's what led me to do the research and find out he was captured there, probably within yards of where the experience took place.
Wow. So could you tell us about that ghost hunt? And I know you guys...
you had it with your grandson.
Yeah, with your grandson. And you guys caught something over the electronic device.
Oh, it was incredible. And actually, I had taken my grandson to Gettysburg just for the history of it. When he was younger, we would do this on spring break. He chose Gettysburg. And I thought to entertain him, he was 14 at the time. I saw that as a journalist registered in Gettysburg that I was entitled to a free ghost investigation. So I said, hey, Connor, would you like to try this out? He said, sure, that sounds like fun. So we were taken to Sachs Bridge. I was not impressed with the location. I wanted to go onto the battlefield proper, one of the field hospitals. But they said, no, you'll like Sachs Bridge. Mm-hmm. We were able to choose the different equipment available, amongst it. One of the things that we chose was a spirit box, a ghost box, basically that scans through radio stations to get real-time EVPs. we had some other equipment with us. This was to be a 2-hour investigation, and the first 2 hours, or rather about the first hour and 59 minutes, were a total bust. My grandson saw a shadow figure. Our guide saw a shadow figure. I learned a lot. She was well versed. I had no clue that Sachs Bridge was basically the center of one vast field hospital, primarily for wounded Confederates, but also some of their prisoners. But just before we were to leave, we started getting hits on the ghost box. The investigator asked, "Is there anyone with us?" Yes. How many of you are here? 7, 8, 9. And I'm thinking, being the skeptical journalist that I am, how are they pulling off this hoax? We actually got a gentleman, gave us his name, said it was 1863. This is detailed in the book, but he gave us a name. And later, when I got home, trying to discredit this whole thing as a hoax, I found this gentleman actually did exist. His name was Malin Briggs. He was an Ohio captain, and he told us that on the bridge. He was mortally wounded, shot the first day at Gettysburg, fell into Confederate hands, and died on July 3rd, the third day of the battle. As a Confederate POW, he may well have died at Sachs Bridge.
Wow.
Blew my mind. That's where the title for the I Met a Ghost at Gettysburg came from. In trying to find how they had pulled off the hoax, I realized, no, this was no hoax. Later on that same trip, we stopped at Little Round Top. Had experiences leading up to that at the Alabama Brigade Monument, but at Little Round Top, we stopped. I stopped my van, turned all the lights off, rolled the window down. My grandson took 5 photographs as quickly as he could. The first one shows 8 orbs, or even tails on some of the orbs. They look like they're congregating at a spot on the slope. The next 4 pictures he took show a growing reddish, yellowish, orangish mist. It gets larger with each shot. And that was not visible to the naked eye. My grandson had the ghost at Sachs Bridge call him by name, but that flipped him out. He said, "Grandpa, let's get out of here." My camera, by the way, wouldn't work, which I had a similar experience at that same place earlier. Not get a camera to work.
It just wouldn't work, or when the battery was drained?
If I pressed the shutter, it would turn off.
Oh, wow.
2 different cameras, 2 different instances did the same thing, totally out of character of the cameras. But so yeah, that's what led me to start researching what happened there, and I learned that my great-great-grandfather was captured on Little Round Top.
Wow, from the Alabama. Your grandfather spoke to you, and I know they played some music for you over in EVP, from what I understand.
Yes. That was also on Sachs Bridge, and that was very unusual. I was trying to figure, we had gotten some voice answers that seemed to be dying off, so I thought, as a historian, what would interest somebody in 1863? So I said, "Do you like jokes?" Got a clear, "Yes, sir." So I said, "Do you like music?" And it was almost like I had insulted the entity I'm speaking to. He says, "Of course." My grandson, quick thinking, says, "Can you play for us?" The voice says, "Absolutely." And we started getting guitar music. And then it sounded like a mandolin. Later on, after it faded out, I said, "Wow, you're good." And he said, "Thank you." I said, "Can you play some more?" He said, "Yes, sir." We got more music with harmonica added in. This was not snippets of radio stations on the ghost box, excuse me. This was actual music over many, many measures, fading in and out. It was kind of mind-blowing. And that's, again, I was thinking they had to be pulling a hoax here. But
yeah, that's a little bit, wow. Wherever the dead are, they have a music room. Full of instruments. That's incredible.
Well, that's good to know, because I like playing guitar, and I want to keep playing.
I'm the same way. I love music. I love to play guitar, and this was very period-sounding music. I did not recognize the melody, but the style was definitely of the 1860s.
Oh, wow. You should have requested some,
Stairway to Heaven,
Black Sabbath or something.
Play Stairway to Heaven.
Freebird.
Smoke on the water.
Play some Freebirders. Yeah. Exactly. Nice. Some Van Halen. So this has been a long debated question, but in your experience or opinion, what is the most haunted area of Gettysburg and why?
Boy, there are so many areas. From what I have heard, the Triangular Field is very haunted. I've not had personal experiences there. To me, Barlow's Knoll and Little Round Top are where I've had my experiences. If we had more time, have had some mind-blowing experiences at Barlow's Knoll.
Well, we can bring him back.
Yeah.
We can bring you back, sir.
Yeah.
And you can share some of the experiences, but we'll definitely want to have you come back.
Yeah, definitely.
So how do we prove ghosts are real?
I wish that I had a better understanding of and basis of education in science. I am not a scientist. I'm hoping that maybe some of our work can encourage people who do have the background in science to research it more fully. I think there's a lot of answers that we can ascertain if we can perfect the communication ability.
Well, that's right. Like Edison and Tesla were both working on those speak to the dead machines.
Right.
Exactly.
We're so close with EVPs that we could just figure out the wavelength or why they're not talking to us. And I don't know if it would be a good thing, though, if we could communicate with the dead.
In a way, that could probably be a bit frightening.
Yeah, because, we kind of, because if that bridge was done, we carried debts with us into the next life.
Yeah, right.
How could anybody remarry?
Yeah.
When somebody died or passed away.
Right.
What I'm finding is the connections that are involved in at least the experiences I've had with those who've gone before are, to me, just incredible. My ancestors at Little Round Top, the 107th Ohio Volunteer Infantry at Barlow's Knoll, that I was not even familiar with at all. I found out there were men from my area in that unit. And I've had very odd experiences in two positions that unit held at Gettysburg.
Well, we're going to play another. It's a longer segment. The final segment that was recorded by David Walton from Don Allison's book, I Met a Ghost in Gettysburg, which we just found out who that ghost was.
Yes, we did.
It's a bit longer, so hang in, but it's beautifully read by David Walton. And this is What Are You Afraid of? Horror and Paranormal Show with Mr. Don Allison, ghost journalist and skeptic.
Mercy, a new horror medical thriller from author T. Fox Dunham, published by Bloodbound Books. Based on the author's horrific battle with a rare form of lymphoma that involved intense chemotherapy and radiation, Fox turns the horror of his experience into terror on the page.
William Saint is dying of cancer. On most days, death seems like a humane alternative to the treatment. Stricken with fever, William is rushed to Mercy, notorious as a place to send the sickest of the poor and uninsured to be forgotten, and finds the hospital in even worse condition than his previous visit.
Willie's memories faded. He grabbed his sack head of the scarecrow, picking at the exposed chicken wire to hold them in. However, the memories fell out of the holes in his face. They wormed and crawled from the leather flesh and the old clothing of the scarecrow, then squirmed and wiggled down his body.
The grounds are unkempt, the foundation is cracking, and like the wild mushrooms sprouting from the fissures of decay around it, something is growing inside the hospital. Something dark.
Fangoria gives Mercy 3.5 out of 4 skulls. Dunham has channeled his many brushes with the other side into the exquisitely rendered, lyrical, supernatural hospital thriller Mercy.
It's feeding on the sickness and sustaining itself on the staff, changing them, and now it wants Willie.
Come now, Mr. Saint. Just a little more of that sweet milk. So salty and so good. You won't miss it. And we ever do so like our delicacies here at Mercy Hospital.
Part medical horror, part supernatural suspense, Mercy is a hard-hitting fever dream of a novel. I enjoyed the hell out of it. Tim Wagner, author of The Way of All Flesh and Eat the Night. Available from Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and bookstores everywhere in both print and digital versions.
Life is an addiction.
Let go. Let it all burn.
Caliburn Press, LLC is a Madison, Wisconsin-based publishing company owned and operated by Alan Ledden. Caliburn works with talented writers, artists, editors, and marketers throughout the United States, and you can find their books through their many imprints that include Damnation Books, Eternal Press, Malaferia Press, Ciento Sordida Publishing, and Spiro Publishing. Please visit their website at sites.google.com/site/Caliburn Press LLC/home or Google Caliburn Press to check out their growing list of titles on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, and any other place fine books are sold.
I Met a Ghost at Gettysburg, A Journalist's Journey into the Paranormal by Don Allison. Copyright 2015 and read by David Walton. Story 4. As long as I can remember, I've been fascinated by the Civil War. This stems from my childhood days visiting my mum's family in Alabama. Mum met Dad in the early 1950s, when he was serving in the US Army and stationed at Fort Benning, Georgia, and she lived in nearby Phoenix City, Alabama. After their marriage, Mum and Dad took up housekeeping in Ohio, where I was born, but every summer we would spend 2 weeks visiting in the South. Members of my family fought on both sides during the Civil War. Grandma Champion told me about sitting on the lap of her grandfather, Newton Jarvis, my great-great-grandfather, as he told her about his war service. She recalled him saying that he got very, very sick during the conflict. Grandma's recollections are borne out by the records. Newton Jarvis served with Companies C and G of the 20th Alabama Infantry Regiment. From the time I could read well enough to comprehend, I began devouring books on the Civil War. I still do so. Bruce Catton was, and for that matter still is, my favourite Civil War author. Eventually, I began building my own personal Civil War library, and I love having all that history at my fingertips. During our courtship, Diane was well aware of my fascination with the war between the states. I talked about the various battlefields I had visited and wanted to visit, and Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, was at the top of my to-visit list. I was surprised and definitely thrilled when Diane suggested Gettysburg as our honeymoon destination. I knew my fascination with history was rubbing off on her, but until then I had no idea just how much that was the case. Another 25 years passed before Diane and I returned there, this time to celebrate our silver wedding anniversary in 2009. By then, we were in the midst of restoring our old house and very much full of curiosity regarding our paranormal experiences. We had seen numerous television shows exploring the ghosts and other phantom occurrences in Gettysburg, which is said by some to be the most haunted place in America. One of the people frequently interviewed in these shows on Gettysburg's paranormal side is Mark Nesbitt. We've seen him on History Channel, A&E, the Travel Channel, and Unsolved Mysteries. His 6-volume Ghosts of Gettysburg series of books had caught my attention, and Diane and I decided to try to meet Nesbitt during our trip. My job as senior editor at the Bryan Times made arranging an interview with Nesbitt fairly easy, and I figured our Times readers might enjoy a story on the paranormal as Halloween was just on the horizon. We arranged to meet with Nesbitt in the headquarters of his Ghosts of Gettysburg candlelight walking tours on Baltimore Street in Gettysburg. Besides discussing Nesbitt's interest in the paranormal for a Times story, we were hoping to talk with him about our own house and our inexplicable goings-on. We scheduled our interview with Nesbitt for late morning of our first full day in Gettysburg, October 12th, 2009. The night before the interview at the hotel, I had a very vivid and very strange dream. I dreamed I was slowly coming to consciousness, and I felt an extreme pain in my right arm and side. I couldn't move, and bit by bit I was becoming aware of my surroundings. I was prone on the ground, and I had a blue Union forage cap sitting crookedly on my head. In the semi-darkness around me, as far as I could perceive, were white canvas shelter tents held up by sticks, covering wounded men. Some were groaning and crying. I felt overwhelmed by the pain I was experiencing. Finally, the walls of the hotel room began taking shape, pushing away the visions of the makeshift tents and wounded men. Too, fortunately, the pain began to leave me. I lay still for a time, trying to make sense of those visions. The details were so clear, the pain so real, that it was unlike any dream I'd ever experienced. Still, to this day, that dream remains a vivid memory. Once I got out of bed in the hotel room, I began making careful preparation for our meeting with Nesbitt. I went over my notes, reviewing the questions I planned to ask, and made sure my camera was ready with fully charged batteries. Mark was very gracious, making us feel at home, and he ushered us upstairs at the 271 Baltimore Street building, a structure that was present during the 1863 battle. The downstairs houses his Ghosts of Gettysburg candlelight walking tours business, including a gift shop. The upstairs provides an informal living quarters. I started off the interview by explaining to Mark that I was looking to write about the explosion of interest in the paranormal at Gettysburg and the boom in the ghost tour business. On a personal note, I told him Diane and I were hoping for his input into the goings-on in our own house. I explained that this topic was just an informal talk between the three of us. At that point, I wasn't yet ready to put my paranormal encounters into print. Diane and I were willing to talk about our odd experiences with family and friends, but I was afraid of the effect it might have on my reputation as a journalist should I actually share with the public that I lived in a haunted house. Mark smiled as we told him about our experiences in our house and was interested in hearing a number of them. He told us our encounters were very common. We weren't crazy, he assured us. And we had nothing to worry about, he said, as it appeared there was nothing malicious in the house. Actually, after talking with Mark, I felt like we were living with some very run-of-the-mill spirits. As part of our formal interview, Mark shared paranormal evidence uncovered in his Baltimore Street building. For example, Nesbitt has recorded EVP responses to questions posed to Georgia soldiers stationed around his building at the time of the battle, and he's captured EVPs from what appears to be a priest and a female voice responding to questions, a voice he believes belongs to Mary Kitzmiller, a woman who lived in the home for 40 years. Once our interview was concluded, I asked Nesbitt to pose for some photographs. I took 2 shots of Mark alone. Then I asked him to sit with Diane. As they sat for the photo, smiling, I turned on my camera and pushed the shutter. And my camera, the digital camera with the fresh batteries I had checked just before driving over from the hotel, turned off. I was embarrassed and apologised to Mark, explaining the batteries were fresh and the camera was working fine earlier in the morning. "It happens here all the time," Nesbitt replied, smiling. I tried the camera several more times. I could turn it on and focus, but as soon as I pressed the shutter, the camera turned off. I tried switching batteries, but to no avail. Occasionally, the camera would capture an image, and after literally dozens of tries, I was able to come away with only 2 photos of Diane and Mark together. Soon after the aborted photo session, we bid Nesbitt adieu, thanking him for his hospitality. As we departed the building, my mind was at work, trying to make some sense of my malfunctioning camera. Over the next 2 days, we visited several other Gettysburg sites. All the while, I might add, my camera worked flawlessly. Tramping the battlefield was on the itinerary for Wednesday, but rain was falling and we opted instead to visit the Boyd's Bear store, then located just off Emmitsburg Road, south of Gettysburg. Diane is an avid Boyd's Bear collector, especially the Boyd's moose figures, so we spent most of the morning and into early afternoon taking in the sights and adding to Diane's collection. The rain continued to fall when we left the Boyd's Bear store and headed back towards the park. Just as we were approaching the boundary to the park on Emmitsburg Road, the rain stopped. Great, I thought, now we can tramp the battlefield. Diane agreed with my suggestion to visit Little Round Top. Just as I flipped on the turn signal to turn right onto Confederate Avenue, the Leonard Skernard song, Sweet Home Alabama, came on the radio. I didn't think much about the song as we headed south on Confederate Avenue, but it certainly struck me as an odd coincidence when I saw the Alabama Monument on our right. Even though I had taken photos of the monument 25 years ago, I thought the fall foliage would make for a colourful background. So, with Sweet Home Alabama still playing on the radio, I grabbed my camera, climbed out of the van, and focused on the monument. And that camera, yes, that same camera, with the fresh batteries recharged since the Mark Nesbitt interview, turned off when I pressed the shutter. Even though the Sweet Home Alabama strains seemed surreal, I concluded that Gettysburg ghosts could be damned. My camera was definitely defective, I thought. It had worked fine since we left Nesbitt, and it should be working fine now. In a repeat of the Baltimore Street building scenario, I would turn on the camera and it would turn off again as soon as I pressed the shutter. Not willing to be outdone by a defective camera, I kept continuing the cycle, and perhaps one time in a dozen I could capture an image. We left the Alabama Monument and made our way to nearby Little Round Top. I have long been fascinated by the 20th Maine Volunteer Infantry Regiment stand against Alabama troops on July 2nd, 1863, the second day of the battle, and I wanted to revisit the unit's monument. Leaving Diane behind, I made the quick climb from the road to the 20th Maine site and again focused my camera for a photo. Yes, that defective camera, which again predictably turned off every time I pushed the shutter. Once again I was stubborn, and with my persistence I could get the camera to work in about 1 out of a dozen tries. I next turned my attention to the hillside, looking down at the approach taken by the attacking Alabama soldiers. Now my camera worked fine. I took several shots looking down the hill with no malfunctions. Curious, I turned back towards the main monument, and again, each time I hit the shutter, the camera turned off. Looking back down the hill, the camera worked fine. I must confess I was shaking my head at this point in disbelief. I got back in the car, explained to Diane my incredible experience with the camera, and we then continued our tour. The camera continued its bulky performance each time we tried to photograph a Union monument, and would work fine on other views until after we were into the wheat field. That camera never repeated this performance again. I owned it for perhaps 2 years after that trip, and never had a problem with it. I gave it to my son when I purchased a new one, and as far as I know, he never had a problem with it either. To this day, I am totally perplexed over the camera, and whatever had taken over control of the power switch.
This is Katrina Weidman of Destination America's Paranormal Lockdown, and you're listening to What Are You Afraid Of? Horror and Paranormal Show.
I'm Jenna Valadez with the Basement Files. Tune in Friday nights, 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Eastern, right here on the Para-X Radio Network.
What happens to a ghost when their home is torn down? No one thinks of the disembodied when they rip down old buildings, dig up cemeteries, and build clean, unhauntable condos. Every year, hundreds of spirits are driven out of their own haunts by the careless living to exist alone with no one to scare. At Para-X Radio, our hosts feel the plight of these evicted disembodied, and we're reaching out to you to please open your heart to one of these lost souls, such as the ghost soldier of the General Wayne Inn or the abandoned spirit cat of Benjamin Rush. So please, please, let a little spooky into your life. Won't you open your house to a ghost without a home?
Para-X. Well, that was David Walton. I mean, that was like 16 minutes there. He does a lot of reading for us. And I know he edits it too, so every time he makes a mistake, he has to go back. I get them edited and formatted
right.
From David. But we're back with episode 77. I'm afraid we have to close out with probably one of our most fascinating guests, paranormal author and journalist, Don Allison.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
It's been incredible, sir, especially talking about one of our favorite places.
Yeah, I know.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it as well.
Anytime Gettysburg comes up in the conversation, we're right there.
We're right there. Yeah, that's like we just love Gettysburg. You know, I had never been to Gettysburg before I got married.
That's right.
Yeah, and then Allison and I went out there one time. I'd never been, and God, it's just such a wonderful place. I can't wait to get back out there.
Yeah.
You know, we're going to try to see Antietam.
Yeah, Antietam's great. Yeah,
good.
Another great field.
Another great place. Yeah.
Go down and see Kathy Gash.
Yeah,
who lives down there. She offered to be our guide.
I would like to get down there again. I mean, I think last time I was in Antietam, I was about 17, so it's time.
it's time. We're talking about going down and also going down to D.C. and kind of driving back up in the area. But he's got a wonderful book called I Met a Ghost in Gettysburg, and you can find that on Amazon, and we'll have links up to it on our website at www.whatareyoufraidofpodcast.com. And we'll also kind of have some links to some of the interviews he's done. I know he's on PBS.
Yeah.
That was a great interview.
That was a great interview.
Yeah, we kind of
really enjoyed that.
We did some research there. Any parting thoughts for our audience, Mr. Allison?
It's great to be aware. It's great to be in touch with what's going on around you. There's a lot there that I think we tend to gloss over, but in some ways, I'm kind of anxious to see what the next chapter holds.
So are we.
Yeah.
Because you're doing another book.
Yeah.
You know.
Very exciting.
Yeah, it's going to be incredible, and we'll probably get you back on the show before that book comes out. You know.
Yeah, promotion. You know, promote the book.
Yeah, but
Tell us about it.
We are What Are You Afraid of? Horror and Paranormal Show. We're on Para-X Radio at 9 o'clock. And like we said last episode, to the fans of Strange Things Radio, they've been moved up to 11 o'clock. So stay tuned.
Yeah.
The boys will be back.
They will be back.
The boys will be back. That
Yes.
fun little show at 11 o'clock, Strange Things Radio.
Yes.
And we are on EMC Podcast Network, ParaX Radio, iHeartRadio, Spotify, iTunes, everything. We're there. You know, if you make a little,
At least we think.
If you make a little podcast network, come and tell us.
We think we're everywhere. We're pretty sure.
We're everywhere. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're pretty sure of ourselves.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Mr. Allison, for being on the show. You've been a wonderful guest, and we can't wait to talk to you again.
Great. Well, thank you.
Okay, well, this has been episode 77, Don Allison, ghost journalist and skeptic. Thanks, Phil, for coming along.
Oh, yeah.
And, we're taking a pause. We'll be back with episode 78. I have no idea.
Yeah, what is? I mean, we have no idea what 78 is.
I have no idea.
But thank you, Don, either way, for being here. Much appreciated.
This is T. Fox Dunham.
And this is Phil Thomas.
The Imani's Baldani's Celtic Warrior. Closing What Are You Afraid Of? Episode 77.
underwear was snapped as I was working in the back of the house.
Cheeky ghost. T. Fox Dunham lives in Philadelphia with his wife Allison. He's a lymphoma survivor, cancer patient, modern bard and historian. His first book, The Street Martyr, was published by Gutter Books. A major motion picture based on the book is being produced by Throughline Films. Destroying the Tangible Illusion of Reality or Searching for Andy Kaufman, a book about what it's like to be dying of cancer, was recently released from Perpetual Motion Machine Publishing, and Fox has a story in the Stargate anthology, Points of Origin, from MGM and Fandemonium Books. Mercy was recently released by Bloodbound Books. Fox is an active member of the Harvard Association. He's been published in hundreds of short stories and articles, and his motto is Wrecking Civilization one story at a time.
Phil Thomas resides in the suburbs of Philadelphia and is an author and filmmaker. His screenplays have been produced into feature films such as False Face and Always from Darkness that are available in major retailers such as Best Buy and Target, as well as availability on Netflix and Amazon On Demand.
The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host and their guests do not necessarily reflect those of Para X, its affiliates, or its sponsors.